Hi, everybody. This is Lauren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal, and welcome to today's SEJ Marketing Think Tank. With me, we have one of our partners, Page One Power, and Joe Oliver from Page One Power will be discussing, different ways that you might find out that you're working with a bad link building company, and probably some solutions. So I'll give you a quick chance to say hi, Joe.
Hey, everybody.
Great. So before Joe gets started, what I want to do is go through some basic housekeeping if this is your first SEJ Marketing Think Tank. First and foremost, the official hashtag is SEJ Think Tank. So if you're attending right now and you want to tell your friends on Twitter to check this out, maybe take some screenshots, whatever that may be, use hashtag SEJ Think Tank. Also, feel free to tag at Page One Power or at Joe Oliver as well on Twitter, and we'll be seeing that and monitoring that accordingly. During the course of Joe's presentation, if you have any questions that come up, please feel free to place them in the question box, which is on the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel. After Joe's finished with this presentation, we'll then be running through the questions and doing a fairly in-depth Q&A session with Joe and myself. So as those questions pop up, ideas pop up, whatever it is, go ahead, leave them in there, and we'll go over those accordingly. Also, after the entire webinar presentation and Q&A session are both over, there will also be a quick survey that will be sent out via GoTo. Please take a minute or so to fill that out. It helps us make our webinars better and produce better content for you. That's pretty much it on my side, except for, one more thing. There'll be a couple polls during the webinar. The polls are pretty easy to fill out. We'll launch them. You can just click a button, and then we'll go over the results of the polls with you. This helps. This will help Joe craft his presentation a little bit and understand a little bit more about what you're looking for as well. So that's pretty much it, Joe. I'll hand things over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Hey, everybody. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedules and spending it with me, listening to what I have to say about working with agencies, and hopefully this will be helpful. I know how important all of our time is, and so it's just an honor to be here to share with you. And thank you to SEJ, to Lauren, for just creating this platform for someone like me to get up and share some thoughts about what to look for when you're working with agencies. A little bit about myself, just real quick. I'm the director of marketing here at Page One Power. I oversee kind of all the elements of working with our customers, from messaging to sales to our customer service. And so that's my day today. What I really love to do is talk with people, help businesses and companies find solutions for their digital marketing goals, and specifically within link building, to really try to help people find solutions. So this is great because I just love talking about this subject, about working with companies and what to look for, and really making sure that these partnerships are successful, not only for what you're trying to get out of it, but also the agency that you've chosen to work with. And so I've titled this subject today, "You might be working with a bad link building agency if." And so this is kind of just a fun way to introduce this idea that choosing a link building vendor and agency can sometimes be a tough, frustrating, hopefully exciting process as they support your marketing efforts. And so I really just wanted to walk through, kind of from our perspective, some tips, some questions to ask, some real actionable things that you could do when you're working with an agency. And I kind of imagine the room for a second. If I were to imagine everybody together in a room, who would be in the room? And I kind of see two groups of people here. The first group would be a group of people that have reached a point where in their organization, whether they're an agency themselves or an in-house SEO team, or some, maybe website owner that has reached a point with their website where the on-site technical is sound and looking great. There's great content being added to the site, and it's being updated. And they've reached a point where they want to take it to the next level and start building links towards the efforts that they're making. And they're probably wondering, we don't have the team to accomplish that. We don't have the expertise to do link building, and so we need to start looking for someone to partner with, someone to help us with the link building effort. So that's a segment of people that I think are going to benefit from this conversation. And then there's another group of people that I think might be in the room. This group of people are those who are currently working with a link building vendor, agency partner, and or has worked with one in the past. And this is one of those things where you're kind of in the partnership and you're really just wondering, is this thing going well? I kind of feel like maybe there are some issues, but I'm not too sure how to pinpoint them. And this is such a big thing because it's hard to make this right decision. And oftentimes when you join in with another agency, it can sometimes feel like you're just putting money in a bucket, lighting it on fire, and then walking away. Like you just don't know what you're getting, and you can get frustrated, and you're expecting certain results, and it's not happening, and you're just wondering, what am I spending my money on, and just having these thoughts running through your mind. And so I think today the conversation will benefit that group of people as well, to really look at, how do I evaluate my current vendor? What are some of the questions I should be asking them? And how can I recognize if there are problems or red flags? And then maybe how can I address them? And so these two groups, I think, are going to get a lot out of this talk. And if there is a third group in the room that doesn't fit any of those two buckets, just hang tight with us, because maybe you'll get something out of it as well. But again, you might be working with a bad link building agency So what's on the agenda today? For the type A's in the room that probably have a pad and pen or wondering what we're going to be going through today, let me just give you a brief outline of the subject matters we're going to talk about. So the first thing that we're going to spend a little bit of time on is awareness. We'll spend a little bit of time in this kind of subject matter. We're going to spend a little bit of time in investigation. So a little bit more time on that. The third element that we're going to look at is evaluation, and we're going to spend most of the time in evaluation. So these three areas are going to make up the bulk of what we talk about today: awareness, investigation, evaluation, and then lastly, we're going to talk about Dutch oven cooking. And if you're wondering right now, like, why are we talking about Dutch oven cooking? What in the world does this talk have to do with Dutch oven cooking? I just encourage you to stay till the end, because you're not going to want to miss this story. I think it'll really wrap this together and bring a lot of context to what we're talking about today. So that's what's on the agenda: awareness, investigation, evaluation, and Dutch oven cooking. So let's get started. Awareness. So this is for that first group that I talked about. This is the point where you realize you need an agency's assistance with link building. Now, this awareness section is so important. I would probably argue, after the time that I've spent working with hundreds of companies in our organization that have come to us, and we've had great successes, and boy, we have blown it, and we have failed too. In that world, I would probably argue that 90% of the problems that you're going to face working in a partnership with another agency happens before the contract is even signed. 90% of the problems begin before the contract is even signed. And it all comes down to this concept of awareness. most people don't know why they're doing what they're doing. Right? So before you investigate a link building agency, you really need to identify, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, what are you trying to do? We have our lead sales guy here. His name's Michael, and he has got the best story. He talks to so many customers, and I remember one time he was telling me about a customer that came to him, and he says, I need links, and so Michael's like, yeah, okay, and started going through our process, and the guy stops him and says, no, I just need the links. You guys have the links. Just give me the links. And Michael's like, wait, what is he asking? And come to find out, like, this guy just knew he needed links, and he just thought, like, we had links. Like, we could just literally, that next hour hand him a handful of links. And his statement was like, you either have links or you don't have links. And it was just like this weird conversation about, like, do you even know what you're trying to accomplish? And this happens a lot in our industry. You hear people say, you need links to do this, you need links to do that. People are like, I need links? Oh, okay, I need links, let's go get them. And they don't even know why they need links. And here's a good question, and this is going to happen all throughout this talk today. I'm going to have a series of questions, and it'd be good to either take a screenshot. This recording will be posted later, so you can always go back and see it. But even write down these questions to be really helpful along the journey. But a question you need to ask yourself is, links for what? Links for what? And I moved on. Let's come back here. There we go. Links for what? Why am I getting links? What's the reason why I would want links? And links are great, but there's always a so that, right? So link building doesn't happen in a vacuum. Link building there's always a so that. What is that goal that you're trying to accomplish? Why do you want these links? These links may help your blog and the content on your blog gain more visibility, right? So the links would be, really, you just don't want links. You want more visibility to the content on your website. See, that's the links for what. And so this is this idea that when you are looking into and you realize we need a link building agency, you really need to understand and wrap your mind around, why do we want this product? Why do we want this service? And that's the awareness stage that we talk about. Why do you want this? So you just don't want links. You want links so that this thing over here will be accomplished. And links are a means to an end. So links for what? Now let's move on to the investigation, right? So you're at this point where you go, okay, I know I need links. I know I want links because I believe that will help influence this area of my website. Now it's time, I need to find somebody, because we don't have the in-house resources, the team, the expertise to accomplish this on our own, but we know we need it. We know we need to influence these things. So finding the right agency in a crowd of many. And there are a lot of vendors, partners, agencies that are out there that will want to give you links. They want to give you links. And so really this is this investigation moment where you really need to go into talking to companies. And I want to give you a few tips. So how to find the right fit. The first thing that you need to realize when you're looking to onboard a link building company is understand that every link building agency is a little different. There's lots of different ideas about how to build links, the ways to build links, the strategies to use, tactics to use, strategies to implement, what pages that they're going to target, how they execute, and really in the sea of many, you need to try to isolate down, how do you find the right fit? Like, how do you know you found the right partner? Let me give you some things to consider. This section right here is going to be a little bit meta narrative here, this big picture, and then the next segment we're going to dive into a little bit of the weeds of questions you can ask. But when you're looking at the scope of link building vendors, agencies, companies that exist out into the world that want to provide the solution you're looking for, you want to consider a few things. The first thing you want to consider is honesty. honesty. Is this company going to be honest with you? It's kind of one of those things where if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? So if you're talking to a company and they're promising you, this result and, this, it's going to, we're going to build you thousands of links and it's going to get you, all this traffic and all these things. And you're just lighting up like, yes, we want that. We want that. Oftentimes, if it sounds too good to be true, you probably should be asking more questions. And so you want a vendor, an agency, a company that's going to be honest with you, right? They're going to come in and go, look, based off of what we see here, this is the kind of result we would expect. They're not going to try to sell you the moon. They're not going to try to, just get you in the door. It's more about, look, we're going to be honest with you. This is what we see. These are the problems that exist. Now, here are the solutions. You would expect solutions, but you really want them to be honest. And sometimes that's hard because we think sometimes our websites are perfect, and we've worked so hard to get them to this point, and someone comes in and goes, well, actually, this isn't linkable. Actually, this isn't top of the funnel content. This is mid to low. These are converting pages. These are product pages, and these don't link very well, and it's hard to hear. But you want them to be honest. You want the company to be transparent. Will they show you what they're doing? I remember one time I was talking to a company that was working with us, and I just asked, I said, tell me a little bit about your last link building company. They had left the link building company. They were investigating us, and so just tell me a little bit about them. What were some of the pain points that you had? And she told me this story, and we were kind of laughing about it. She said, we had went months where they didn't report one link. They didn't show 1 ounce of thing that they were doing. And she said, and I kind of was like nervous to ask. I didn't know what to say. So finally I got the nerve and I just asked them, hey, can I see some of the links you're building? Which seems like a weird, like, why would you be nervous asking that? But, sometimes it is. It's like, hey, can you show me what you're doing? And their response was like mind-blowing. The response was, we're building so many links, we just can't even show you them all. So we can't show you because we're building so many links. It was like red flag, fireworks going off, like we've got problems. And, the point is, like, you want someone who's going to be transparent. You want someone who's going to be willing to show you what they're doing, right? If they've got to hide behind a curtain, if they got to make excuses like, we're building so many links, we can't even show you what we're doing, there's probably a problem. And so when you're investigating, you need to ask, do you guys show your work? Are we able to see emails? Are we able to see sites? Are we able to see pitches? Are we able to see, targets? Are we able to, can we see the tactics? Do we know what you're doing? And so that's about transparency. You also want someone who's available. There's nothing worse than like the moment you sign that contract, you've gone, they were there every step of the way. They were calling you every 5 minutes because they wanted your business. They were throwing everything at you and making themselves available to you. And then you feel good and you're like, all right, we're going to do this. The contract gets signed, and then it's just ghost town, right? They don't answer calls anymore. They're not very available, and there's nothing more frustrating than that. And so, a good question you might ask in a situation like that is like, hey, when we're up and running, how available are you guys when we have questions or concerns or thoughts or want to talk about the strategies being worked on? Are you going to be available? Is there someone I can talk to, or is this happening in a vacuum? And I just got to, at the end of it, hope that we get what you said you're going to do. So availability is huge. And then ultimately, you really want to ask this question: does the agency's message reflect your values as a company? And one way that you can find this out is, obviously by going to their website, looking at the copy on the site. Does it reflect a message of honesty and transparency? And and do those things reflect your values, right? Because not everything's bad, right? So just because an agency's website doesn't have a lot of information about transparency, or it seems that it's kind of like an order form, that doesn't mean that they're going to do bad work. That doesn't mean that they're a bad company. But you have to settle on, is this a partnership that reflects the values that we have as an organization? And so you want to kind of have that in the back of your mind. Now, these thoughts are a little bit kind of lofty and big, which is cool. But then really when you're investigating, when you've kind of narrowed the focus a little bit, there are even more questions that you want to begin to ask. And so this is about asking the right kinds of questions when you're having the phone calls, right? This is pre-contract. This is you've narrowed the focus. Like maybe there are 5 agencies that everything you've seen online reflects your values. It makes sense for you, and you think, okay, we've narrowed this down to 5. Now it's time to get on the phone and talk to somebody. Of course, every company's going to have their pitch. Every company's going to have their standard. Hey, this is what we can do. But you really want to be in the driver's seat at this point. You want to ask really good questions. And so knowing what questions to ask is really going to help you weed out, as you're narrowing the focus on who to choose, it's going to weed out the people that don't fit what you're trying to accomplish in your organization. So let's look at some questions. About a year ago, a little over a year ago on Search Engine Journal, there was an article written called 40 Questions to Ask When Vetting Link Building Agencies. I've provided the link below, and this is a fantastic article that is about this subject matter. What kind of questions should you ask? And there's a section at the beginning of the article that lists these questions that I've put in front of you. And I'm not going to go through them all today. We don't have the time for that. So let me just pick out a couple that might be helpful to you. So one of the things that you might ask is, how do you evaluate potential linking sites, right? Second from the bottom one down. How do you evaluate what sites to target? That's a great question, because then it's going to indicate to you what kind of metrics that are valuable to the organization, right? So if they just go, we only look at DA, right? Which is a fine metric, but it's a third-party metric trying to assess value of it on a domain level, right? It's not everything that should be involved when assessing the value of a site. It's one thing, but it's not everything. And so if that's the only thing that they look at, you might go, yeah, but what about the traffic that the site's getting? What about, what does SEMrush say about the site? And what kind of keywords exist on the site? And what kind of content exists? And is it relevant? And does it fit with, all these sorts of things might come into play. And so it might help you, like, well, if that's all you look at, there are other things that are important to me too, and I want those things to be taken into consideration. You might ask a question, when should I expect to see results from my project, right? So if you're in a bind and you're hoping for overnight results, you might want to ask that, when am I going to see results? And then what do those results actually look like? You might ask a question about, do you have any examples where those results have actually taken place when you've executed this plan? What's your process for outreach? Is a great one. How do you do outreach? One of my favorite questions on here is, who will be doing the actual work to secure links for my project? Now, this isn't to infer that there's necessarily a right way and wrong way. Some organizations outsource their link building work. Some companies do it in-house. And this goes back to, you have to understand what you want out of a company, because it may not, we're not saying it's a bad thing to outsource to other people or to do it that way. It just means you need to know what you want, because the question might be, I want to talk to the link builder that's actually doing the work. And if the organization doesn't have the people available in-house, well, that might be a pain point for you. But if you don't care about, working with the link builder and you just want to see the links come in, yeah, outsourcing may not be a big problem for you. It really just comes back to what you need to see. And these are really great questions to ask any type of link building company when you're considering using their services. So screenshot this, take a look at it, write it down later, come back to it, put it in your notes. But the next conversations you have, these are great questions to ask. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren for our first poll.
Absolutely. So here you go. Launching the poll. Do you have concerns with your current link building partnership? Please just take the time to answer yes, meh, or can we take this conversation offline? So typically we try to get about 70% of you answering the poll questions. We're at 40 right now. If we could do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown, looks like we have 50%. And I'm going to close it in a second. So it's your final chance. Go ahead and vote now. Closing the poll. And here are the results. So it looks like you have about 24% saying yes, so they do have concerns. 67% are, they're pretty satisfied, and then 9% would rather take this conversation offline and maybe talk to you directly about that. Any thoughts on that information?
That doesn't surprise me. Link building's super difficult and oftentimes can be really vague and some of the stuff we're going to talk about later. So it doesn't surprise me that someone listening to this is going, it's, I don't, because a lot of times, like I said, 90% of the problems that exist happen pre-contract. We go into it not really knowing what we want and what we expect, and good expectations haven't been set. So it's kind of like, well, I don't know, is it going well? Is it not going well? So that doesn't surprise me, and definitely want to try to help with that. Arm our audience with some information on how they can maybe go back to their link building agency and partner and have some good conversations. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. So the first part was like, if you're looking, right, you're investigating, you realize you need somebody. Now we're at the point where like you've made your decision. So this is for that second group now of people that are like, I have a company I'm working with, and or I've worked with a company before. And those that have said, yeah, I've made my decision, right? The relationship is serious now, where contracts are signed, ink's dried, and we are now moving forward. And so this next section, I think, will be really helpful for you. So we're going to talk about evaluation for a second. So you have the company in the house, and it's evaluating where we're at and where we're going. And the first thing to remember about evaluation is that regular and timely communication between both parties is an absolute must. Sometimes what I've seen a lot is companies that hire link building services and then they disappear for like 3 months. And then 3 months later, they come back in and they call up and they go, what's going on and what's happening and why this or why that? And it's super frustrating because the link building company is trying to do their best, and if the other party isn't involved in that process, it makes link building super difficult because there's so much involved in link building in so many ways that you can pivot. And so if good communication between both parties, not just the vendor but also the company, is it can cause a lot of problems. So evaluation has to be about good communication between both parties involved. So when you're evaluating, the thing that you want to look at is how do they report, right? How do they communicate the work that they're doing to you? Because at that point, you're gonna identify a whole host of scenarios when they're sending you the report. Hopefully they're sending you the report. If they're not communicating at all, red flag, right? But if they are reporting to you, you want to be looking at these things. So you need to ask the question, are the results clear to both you and your agency? This is about really setting good expectations. If you haven't done this at the beginning, it's not too late. You can get on the phone with your company and go, look, we really need to talk about what results should be. And then really look at, are they reporting on those reports? Do they speak to the goals, right? So if you come into an organization and you're saying, hey, we want to really impact the content on our site to capture more keywords that exist online through this great content that we're writing. And then at the end of 3-6 months, they just give you a list of links that they built, right? It's kind of like, well, okay, thank you, but did that thing do the thing that I thought it would do? And so you really want to be evaluating, are they speaking to the goals? So if the agreed upon goal was to affect this thing, the reporting should be about that thing, right? So we built X links, but here are the results of those links and the impact that we're seeing that it's making, right? So do they speak to the goals? Another thing you could look at is, do their reports reflect the goals, and are they even meeting the goals? So evaluation is about, do they speak to it? Fair enough. Do they report it? Do you see it somewhere where you can look back at it? And then are they even meeting it, right? So if it's to affect this thing, to gain more keywords here, to do this traffic thing, so we're building links to impact this over here. And if the reports are like, yep, nothing, right? Red flag to go, hey guys, we've got to evaluate this. What are we doing, right? Because the whole point was to do this thing, not just get links, but to do this thing. Links for what? For what purpose? And if that purpose isn't being met in the evaluation, it's an opportunity to have a conversation. So how do they report is a great question. I want to talk about a couple red flags now, a few red flags. These are things that if you're seeing these things, it should be it's time maybe to have a conversation. So if the organization is missing meetings, right? So they don't show up, they're late to calls, they're just kind of non-existent. This is that availability portion that we talked about before. But if they're missing meetings, it's like, oh, why is this happening? They're not willing to show you the work, right? The story I shared earlier. We can't show you the work because we're building so many links. Red flag, right? You're not showing me what you're doing. There's a lack of communication, right? A lot of times people don't like conflict. Okay, so let me just give you an insight to the other side of an agency. If things aren't going well with an agency, human beings have a tendency to want to avoid conflict. And so when you see a lack of communication, i.e. they're not getting their updates to you, they're missing meetings, they're not communicating very well, it might be a sign that they're actually struggling and things aren't going well. And so when you see a decrease in communication, it's probably because they're scared, they're worried, they're struggling. And it's those moments that you might want to initiate conversation to try to get to the surface the problems that exist. Maybe there's constant excuses. Well, we were going to do this, but then this, and oh, well, but we needed this, and oh yeah, well, we've got this over here, and there are times that there are reasons certain things don't happen. Fair enough, we all agree. But if it just seems like there's this constant flood of yeah buts, maybe there's a red flag there. Red flag, right? They're not doing what they said they do. This is a big one, right? We said, hey, we're going to do A and B and C. And if they're off, in Neverland doing, X, Y, and Z, like, hey, what's going on? Red flag, right? Moment to have a conversation. Here's a particular one. Focus only on one metric. This is in the link building space. This is a big deal. I talk to a lot of companies that just come running in the door with like DA on the brain, right? It's like it's become this industry norm, this third-party metric, which Moz has done a great job trying to help us understand the authority of a site, right? They're working diligently to help us with that, but it's not perfect. And yet our industry has just kind of absorbed DA as this thing that maybe Google has branded, and it's almost become the substitute for PageRank, right? We don't ever say PageRank anymore. We all say DA. And anybody that just kind of focuses on one metric, we got to have better conversations about that. Again, that's not to say that metric is a bad metric. It has its place in context, right? With a whole host of other things that ought to be considered when you're looking at a value of a link. And so anytime anyone's just kind of constantly, well, I got this one metric, it's like, yeah, but it's not relevant to anything that we do, say, or even believe. So, okay, thanks for the great DA, but my site is about selling boats in Florida, and you got me on a site in Nevada about selling something else. I have a bad example, but you get the idea. So here's some red flags. Bottom line is this: no agency is perfect. So here's the deal. This isn't a talk about there's one perfect agency out there that you should choose. And even at Page One Power, we love what we do. We believe in what we do, but we're not perfect either. And so there's an understanding that comes in with this, that no agency is perfect. We want to know how to tackle problems and challenges so that you can find long-term success, right? It is a pain, and I've talked to way too many companies that have expressed the frustration of having to leave the process of getting a vendor approved in an organization, which can take months, right? If you're an in-house SEO and you're at the point where you need a link building company, and then you got to go to your SEO manager, and then they got to get approval from so-and-so, and they've got to get approval, and then it's got to go to finance to get approved for the funds, and then it's got to go to legal so that they can approve the right? I mean, this is such a long process to finally get someone in the door to do link building, to leave that link building agency. Man, that is a pain, absolute pain. And so the key here is that not to just go, well, Joe said, and so I'm just going to bail on these people. No. We want to solve problems, right? We want to work through it, because I understand how hard it is to bring a link building company into your organization. So the key isn't just to jump ship. The key is to, how do we solve these problems? Because just because there's red flags doesn't mean there's not solutions. And so we want to talk about those solutions, but we're going to talk about those solutions after our poll.
Excellent, Joe. So I'm launching our second poll right now. Would you like to know more about what Page One Power does and how we can help you? Please select one of the following: yes or no. Pretty easy stuff. This has been a great presentation thus far. Really impressed with a lot of what you've shared. So I'm seeing more, well, I won't share yet, but there's a big discrepancy here between one of the answers and the other answer. 58% of you have voted. 60% of you have voted. Let's do a quick countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Closing and sharing the results. So 64% of attendees want to talk to you afterwards to learn more about what you do and how you can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Too kind. Thank you for that. And really, what I'm really excited about here is talk about this last section, and it's really about solving problems. Because again, I'm not advocating that anyone just jump ship, and Page One Power is not here saying everybody's bad and we're good. Look, every agency's different. Let me arm you with some information to how to deal with problems, because the ultimate goal, no agency exists to just mess up, right? I actually believe they actually care. So when problems exist, we want to deal with them because both parties want to win, right? The agency doesn't want to lose your business, and you as a company don't want to go spend the time going finding someone else. So everybody wants to win. We want to hit the target. How do we deal with it when we've notified, seen red flags, and we recognize problems? Let's deal with it. Here's one of my favorite statements of all time. Anyone in my organization knows that I say this probably more than I say anything else, but we always assume the best. I've seen this way too often, that a report comes in, and maybe it's not exactly in line with what we thought, and then it's just like, these guys are the worst, and I can't believe they did this, and then we get on the phone, and it's like, oh, why did this happen? And it's not healthy, right? So a good practice, when you feel like there are problems with your agency, can we just start off by saying, assume the best. Assume that they didn't mean to mess that up. Assume that that a mistake happened, and it wasn't intentional, right? We think sometimes the mistake was intentional, like we meant to do that or they meant to do that. And so a good thing to do when you're dealing with problems is assume the best, because if you start off a phone call with your link building company and you're just, blasting them for this thing, it's almost like anytime someone comes at us, we get put in a corner, and it's like we get defensive and walls go up, and it's just not healthy for good communication. So a practice that I would ask, if you feel like there are problems with your link building company, first off, just assume the best, right? Assume maybe there was a mistake. Maybe I didn't send the email I thought I sent. Maybe I wasn't clear in my email that I sent, and maybe it was misinterpreted. And start from that position, and you'll find the communication will go so much better with your link building company if you just start with assuming the best. I know it's hard, right? Because again, the worst thing, you just don't want to put money in a bucket, light it on fire, and walk away, right? That's the huge fear. And I know it's hard, but just do me a favor. Next time you talk to them, assume the best. Pick up the phone. Too much communication happens through email. Right? And it's necessary, but if you're upset with something, don't send the email. Get on the phone. If the email has to be sent, it's to schedule a call. Hey, look, I was looking over the last report. I have some questions about what I'm seeing here. Can we get on the phone and talk about it? If an agency is unwilling to get on the phone with you to talk about your progress, right? You might be working with a bad link building agency. But I bet most that are any worth their salt would actually get on the phone and talk with you about the progress. So pick up the phone and talk, because listen, at the end of the day, it's another human being on the other end of the line. And I know time is money, and I know we've got businesses to run and things to accomplish, but at the end of the day, like, we're all just people trying to do our best. So just get on the phone and talk with them about it. Lastly, this is another one of my favorite statements. I say probably way too often in our organization is, this is a great question. You need to ask yourself, when you feel like there's a problem, you need to ask yourself, is this a tension to manage or a problem to be solved? Let me say that again. Is this a tension to manage or a problem to solve? What do I mean by that? If you get your report or information from your agency at the end of a month or 3 months or whatever the timetables may exist, and say the links that you thought were going to be built didn't get built in time. And the reason is that the agency says, well, we sent this amount of emails, but our response rate was really low. Is this a tension to manage or a problem to solve? Do you want the links? Absolutely. But is this a problem to solve? Is that agency capable of forcing webmasters to link? Right? If anybody can, it's probably not worth having. So the reality is that a good link building company can't force a webmaster to go in and add an href link, right? So this is a tension to manage. The reality of good link building is that sometimes people don't respond to your outreach. That's just a given. And so this is a tension to manage, not a problem to solve, because you can't solve the problem by forcing people to link to you. Versus things like timely communication, updates on reports, strategy and outreach, methods. Those can be problems to be solved, right? So if the argument in the previous example is we didn't get the links that we thought we were going to get because we only sent 3 emails, problem to solve, right? Guys, we got to be sending more emails. If you expect to get 3 links, sending 3 emails isn't, it's not 100% conversion. So a problem to solve to say, guys, can we be sending more emails, please? Like, that doesn't work. Not a tension managed, problem to solve. So this is a great question. When you're dealing with problems, you want to assume the best. You want to talk on the phone. You need to ask yourself, regarding the problem that I think exists, is it a tension to manage or is it a problem to solve? Because any good link building company will want to solve these problems. They'll want to help manage these tensions and help you understand the whys behind what's happening with their account. In any partnership, we all have to understand this. In any partnership, there are hurdles to overcome. Knowing how to spot the problems, how to work together to overcome them is going to lead to long-term success for you and your agency partner. This is huge. No link building campaign is perfect. There are always going to be obstacles and hurdles, and you have to know how to spot these things, address them, and deal with them appropriately, so that, like I said earlier, so that this can be a long-lasting relationship. No agency wants to lose your business. No company wants to spend more time finding a new company to work with, right? So the win is that, can we get through these problems together? And hopefully I've given you some information that might help with that. Now a story about Dutch oven cooking. I know you've been waiting for this the whole time. You've ignored everything I said because you're like, what in the world is he going to say about Dutch oven cooking? My wife and I, we love to camp, and we camp a ton during the summer. We live in Idaho. We have beautiful mountains and great spots to go camping and spend time outdoors. And this year, for the first time, we got a Dutch oven pot. And if you don't do camping and you don't know what this thing is, I provided a picture. It's this pot that you cook a meal over coals and fire. And it's like the most delicious thing you'll ever eat. This past year, we got for the first time. We've been camping forever, and so why we haven't done this earlier, I have no idea. But we got one, and my wife got this beautiful roast, right? This big roast, and she seasoned it, and we put it into the Dutch oven. And I mean, she put like a cube of butter. I mean, it was just amazing, right? And we put it in there, and then we put it over the coals, and it had to cook for it was like 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours to cook this roast. And I'll tell you what, when we got done with it, like, we could smell it coming out, and it was amazing. And when we took that bite, it was it was infused with the flavor and the seasoning, and it just, it would melt in your mouth. It was the most delicious thing I've ever eaten. If I'm on my deathbed, like, I want that roast again. It was amazing. But we had to wait 3.5 hours to eat the thing. Now, can you imagine if my wife came and said, I got this beautiful roast, I've seasoned it, and you know what? We're going to throw this thing in the microwave. That would be the worst, right? Nobody wants a microwaved roast, right? And no amount of time, right? We could throw the thing in the microwave for 30 minutes and it could be cooked, but the thing would be horrible. It would be the worst thing ever. Nobody wants a microwave roast. We want a Dutch oven roast, the time that it takes. And here's my point. Link building is like cooking with a Dutch oven. Link building is not microwavable. It is not instantaneous. We live in a microwavable generation. We live in a world where everything's instantaneous, and I've got everything I need at my fingertips. And the problem is that we apply that same logic when it comes to link building. And we come in and go, I want links, and I need links now, and these links need to be great right now, this second. Why is this taking so long? Listen, link building is like cooking with a Dutch oven, and trust me, when link building's done the right way and it takes the time to really make a difference, it'll be the best thing you've ever had. And so that's my last slide for you guys. I really want to thank you all for joining me today, and I hope you got something out of this. It was helpful to some of you. And if you have any questions, I believe now's the time. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks a lot, Joe. And next time you do some Dutch oven cooking, feel free to give me a call. I'd like to check that out. Okay, so first of all, some of the questions are coming in, and I'll let them trickle in. I'm really glad you brought up the domain authority thing, because I spoke at a conference on Monday called Content and Commerce, and I spoke on feature snippets and things like that. After my presentation, I had a bunch of people come up and ask me questions, right? So one of the questions that came up was, hey, my site has a domain authority that is a 50 or 60, and it's being outranked by sites that have a domain authority of 40 or 35, and what's going on? So I asked the guy, I'm like, well, what is domain authority to you? And his answer was, oh, that's the power of your site. That's just that's how SEO works. And I had to sit down and explain that domain authority is one metric put together by one tool company that indexes a sample of the web
Yeah.
and not the entire web, and
Uh,
has created that themselves. And to start looking into things like, well, you use a tool, an easy to use audit tool like, SEMrush or Raven Site Auditor, and run audits on those sites and see how well they're put together compared to yourself. Look at things like, how secure is your site? Look at things like what the content is, what the content that's being published on those sites versus your own. Look at the inbound links, and also keep in mind that things like domain authority, people can trick domain authority as well. So, you know,
yeah, I don't know
I do
how.
like the Moz company, but it's
Yeah,
become this replacement for PageRank,
right.
and it's a very imperfect number.
Yeah, I don't know how when that transition happened or how it happened, but it blows me away. Like the exact analogy. DA is the new PageRank, right?
Right.
And it's just it's helping people understand. Man, if that's the only thing you're looking at, you're missing out on a whole host of ways to evaluate your site and other sites linking to you. We love citation flow and trust flow from
Yep.
Majestic.
Yep.
Those are two great metrics as well. And it's really about the harmony between them. Like we love Moz. Moz is a great company. We'd all agree. But again, it's not about just putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, exactly. I introduced the person to trust flow as well. And just like look at everything across the board. It's not one specific number.
So
So,
then, and you
oh,
ought
go
to
ahead.
make the tool that combines them all for us, right? Is that going to be your next?
Could be, could be. So, a couple questions came in. What do you feel is the best link building strategy for 2017 for this
Whoa.
year?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a different question. For 2017, here's okay. So here's my thought process. I don't believe link building tactics change that much. So to bucket it into like here's the new thing for 2017, as if the thing in 2016 like changed or something. Um, Good link building is about finding relevant sites that make sense to your audience, that you have something valuable to offer, and suggesting that they link back. Now, the tactics to use to find those opportunities is where the intricacies of link building come in. I have found one of the best ways, if you have a site or a brand that is being mentioned, boy, that if you're looking to get quick links, i.e. the fastest opportunity to earn a link is to go out and use whatever mentioning tool, whether it's Google Alerts or Moz's tool, to go out and see, are we being mentioned online? Is my CEO being mentioned? In fact, Rand did a Whiteboard Friday where he talked about this recently, but looking for those opportunities through what we would call fresh mentions, right? Places where your content was linked to or shared online. Maybe you might reach out to whoever shared it and see if they'd be interested in linking back or whatever. I think that's one of the tried and true methods. It does require that you need to be talked about online. So, for maybe smaller websites that don't have a large presence, maybe that's a little harder. But honestly, it's hard to say what's the best tactic for 2017. I think if you're doing quality link building, the right way to begin with, the tactics don't change. If you're doing human-to-human engagement, if you're reaching out to actual webmasters that have to manually go into the back end of their site and add an href, that stuff won't die, whether it's 2017 or 2025. I think it's going to be the same. So I don't know. That's my answer.
Yeah, Carl just wrote in the questions that link building is a process of nurturing and development, and I agree. If you look at the example that you just used with the fresh mentions, someone writes about the company, they may not link to you, but that gives you the opportunity to send them a thank you message, right?
Absolutely.
And say, hey, we saw that you wrote about our study. Just to let you know, we have a copy of it over here if you'd like to share it with your readers as well. So I think that is incredibly important too.
I,
Um,
I don't
Go ahead.
subscribe to the idea that links just happen. I mean, they do, right? But they do for like big brands, right? Links just happen for big brands. For most all companies, you know, the other 90% of online services that aren't big brands, there has to be an ask. And I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with making an ask. If they've shared your content, they've shown interest in your site, they've connected some way with your brand, making an ask, you know, that's not a bad thing. And so I think sometimes there can be this stigma that you shouldn't have to just, you know, like, I don't know, build great content and links will come. Well, no, not really. And maybe for these big brands, but for the majority of web owners, website operators, that tends to not to be the case. And so helping, you know, yeah, it's okay to make an ask.
Yeah, and it's okay to make a very well thought out ask, as opposed to asking 1,000 people at once with the same exact email template.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, I guess there's some assumptions I make about my philosophy. That I would not infer in any way that spamming or just not being personal is any tactic, you know, that you should use. But I kind of just assume that sometimes when I talk, and that's great clarification.
Now here's an interesting question for you. And I had talked about this with some folks in a podcast earlier in the week. Recently, Forbes no-followed a lot of their outbound links. Inc.com no-followed a good amount of their outbound links about 6 or 7 months ago, I believe. There's a lot of sites out there, makeuseof.com, for example, that has traditionally no-followed third-party links. How do you, first of all, how do you feel about the value of a natural link versus a no-follow? And when you're working with clients and suddenly a site does decide to blanket no-follow everything instead of trying to figure out which writers are taking advantage of the system, how do you typically deal with clients when you're discussing that with them?
Yeah, so great questions. So I guess I would start by saying no one would ever argue, or nor should they argue, that just because Forbes no follows their outbound links, you shouldn't desire a link on Forbes. I think there is some debate, and I think there are plenty of forums that exist online where people smarter than me, I'm sure, have discussed the idea of no follow versus follow. I think when you think of follow versus no follow, you're looking for link juice and equity flowing through the link back to your site. There have been some studies to say that some no follow actually still make some impact, though it may be harder to tell. But these big brands that are beginning to no follow their stuff, number one, if you get a link on Forbes, like, you should be high-fiving everybody in the room.
Exactly.
That's great, because not only are you going to get that recognition, but the click-through may be more powerful than it would be on some lower-level site that there may not be any click-through. I mean, it's just a great thing. So let that be that. I think for these big companies, it's kind of like, I feel like 2012 Google, right? So they come out with Penguin, and everybody loses their mind about what Google thinks about links. And I don't think Google ever once took a position on the value of links. I think what they did is they took a position on the abuse.
Right.
So they saw an abuse in our industry with links, and they just said, enough. Like, we tap out. We're going to put a stop to this. They never once said we don't like links. They never once said we're changing our algorithm to devalue links. They just said enough's enough. We're going to stop the abuse. And by and large, they did. They did a great job with it. And I wonder if some of these big brand companies that were having authors getting paid to put links in, like Forbes, just went, enough is enough, guys. Like, why are you abusing this? And that motivated desire to no follow was just simply like, we have these authors that are getting money under the table to add links in that you may not otherwise be there, and so they start no following as a practice, as a site as a whole, to stop the abuse. So within that, I think you should desire a follow link is probably better than a no follow. But when you're on these big brand sites, just because it's a no follow, don't hang your head low. Like, be high-fiving people. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. If you get on Forbes, that's something you can print out and put on the CEO's wall, right? So
Exactly.
that's great stuff. Joe, it's been fantastic. Thanks for taking the time today to share this information with our audience here at Search Engine Journal. Just to let everyone know, if you haven't subscribed to our Search Engine Nerds podcast, please do. It's here at the bottom of the screen, available on iTunes and, of course, Google Play. And we're also going to be sending out a recording of Joe's presentation today, along with the Q&A, posting it on YouTube, and doing a recap on Search Engine Journal. For all attendees and registrants, we'll be sending you those links as well, so you have all that information in front of you. And again, Joe, it's been fantastic. Thanks a lot. Thanks to the team at Page One Power. We're always happy to have you here. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining.